Welcome back to Two Homers and a Realist. This is, I'm going to call it the first off-season pod. It is off-season for OU. It is the middle of the college football playoff. We've got the championship game coming up. I'm Steve.
Lucas.
Connor. Jay.
We're back at full strength. We're back at home. We're going to reassess where we've been, talk about the Sooner season in 2023, give a little bit of what's been going on in the transfer portal, talk about our expectations going into the spring, and then circle back to what's going on in the college football playoff landscape and just in general what's going on in the college football scene. And we'll talk about locks of the week at the very end. So let's talk about the season. This can kind of be a season wrap and overview. We've had a bit of time to put the exhibition game of the bowl game behind us. I would say that we have to look at it in all of its pluses and minuses. In my opinion, it's an overall achievement of success. It's an advancement. We're better than we were the year before in significant ways. We definitely got better in, I think, all facets of the game, all said, or at least the two major facets of the game, offense and defense. Special teams, probably not. A lot of that comes down to a couple of specific players that underperformed. But I'm very pleased with the defense. I think, Jay, you've got some stats on defense at how much they improved. Offense improved. Obviously, we've got some transition going on. We're losing an offensive coordinator that we think it's addition by subtraction, and Seth Littrell's a very good replacement. I think in the long run, Jackson Arnold is going to be a much better quarterback than Dillon Gabriel. We still have a lot to be seen on offensive line to see how good that is. That's my biggest question going into the spring. What do you guys think about what's happened so far, what 2023 looked like, and where we stand?
Yeah, I mean, again, you go from 6-7 to 10-3. That by itself should be a solid indication of the improvements that were made. And I think you said it well in all facets of the game. Still a lot to be desired, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And hopefully that transition between Lebby and Gabriel to Littrell, Finley, I guess if you want to say, and Arnold, hopefully that takes us up a notch. And I think it's what we've said, and it's what we said going into the bowl game. There's going to be some growing pains on that side of the ball, especially at the quarterback position, just because Arnold is young. But he has a full offseason to figure that out. He was here for a full offseason last year. So I'm excited. To your point, the offensive line remains a massive concern. Jay, I think you put it really well earlier. Looking ahead, it's Bedenbaugh and Arnold. And if I had to say the one that I have a concern about, it's Bedenbaugh for sure. And not just necessarily him, but the unit as a whole. So what can he do over the next few weeks and into the can you contact players after the portal? I guess after the portal closes. When do coaches have to stop talking to? Can you always talk to portal guys?
They just have to file their paperwork
and then they're open to talk to.
And then I think it's okay. But they just can't enter the portal tomorrow.
Right. So we'll see what happens over the next few weeks there. You got to hope some of those discussions happen sooner rather than later and get wrapped up. I'm nervous about that unit. I mean, going into a much more competitive defensive league like the SEC, you need a strong offensive line. And right now, I mean, with what we have, a lot of young guys, with a couple guys coming in with some experience, it's a little nerve-wracking. But overall, I'd say stock up entirely. Defensively, amazing. I know, Jay, like you said, Steve, you'll have some stuff for us. But being able to retain as many guys as we are on that side of the ball is going to be massive in the coming SEC season.
I'll say, as a season wrap-up, I had us 9-3, and we went 10-2. But honestly, if it was just one play in Kansas, one play at Oklahoma State, we're undefeated. So the difference in last year, we had all those losses of close games. And this year, we only ended up with 2 losses in close games. And we probably only had, 2 or 3 other close games total? I mean, obviously, Texas was close.
Rightfully so.
SMU kept it close for a while.
We played 5 close games and ended up 3-2.
UCF was really close.
That sounds about right. Yeah, UCF knocked 2-point conversion stoppage. But I mean, overall, we played much better than I thought. When I had us with 3 regular season losses and we still had 2, but those 2 could have very easily been wins if Jeff Lebby doesn't suck. Also in the Kansas game, the defense had a chance to finish that out and didn't. But I have to say I was very surprised by how much better the defense was in 1 year under Brent Venables. Him coming in and the defense had a bunch of busts last year, I feel like, and this year we looked a lot more steady. Stutzman coming on like he did. Gentry looked really good when he had his chance pre-injury, and of course Bowman was probably the best player on the field for the overall season. And getting those 2 back alone is a big enhancement for next year because, that's the captain of your defense, in the middle of the field, and the captain of the defense in the back of the field. And then getting all the defensive linemen to buy in and come back when, a lot of those guys could have put in for the NFL draft and probably were 6th or 7th rounders maybe, or undrafted free agents. But for them to come back to another year of college football is a huge benefit to us with the step up in, strength that we're going to be looking at in a new conference next year. So,
and they've got some competition too.
Yeah.
Across the board in the defense.
I mean, we're going to have
It's
some
not
freshman
like-
linemen come in.
Yeah.
They're going to be playing.
Yeah. So,
They
so
probably
it's
won't be
not
starting.
like you're guaranteed
Right.
to finish strong the entire season. You might be pushed for your job midseason.
And then offensively, disappointment this year. I know Gabriel had great numbers. Jeff Lebby never did it for me. I've questioned him since day one. Never liked the hire. Glad that he's gone. I don't care if he scores 50 a game in Mississippi State. I don't think he's very good. And I'm glad that Luttrell is going to be in there now. I'm a little disappointed at the bowl game that he didn't get to instill or install really any part of his offense that I'd hope to see at least, 3 or 4 plays here and there. They did run some GT counter when Lebby just seemed like he was dead set against stuff like that. So it'll be nice to see when Luttrell gets to put his imprint on the offense and see what that does for next year.
I'll go a little different angle just because you guys pretty much touched up on everything. I think there was obvious growth in the coaching staff. I think we were better at clock management. We were better at our timeouts. We were better with in-game decision-making. Still not perfect. You can tell we're growing as a staff, which you could argue that maybe you shouldn't have a staff that's learning still at the University of Oklahoma or a head coach, but that's where we're at. And I think there was improvement there. As Lucas mentioned, we got a little bit better at winning those tight games. We didn't fold as much. We didn't buckle as much. Really just trying to think of something else you guys didn't get on.
Yeah, sorry. Go
How
ahead.
about the Emmett Jones hire?
Yeah,
That was a great hire. Wide receivers, whether it just be they're older or bringing in Angelo Anthony was a great guy.
Yeah, what
no
would
one
we have
talks
done-
about him coming back.
What we have done with them for the second half of the season.
We might not have lost.
Point. That's a
We
great.
really might not have lost.
I know. I mean, it gave Anderson a chance to get on the field more.
But hey,
And that dude's
true
a
number
touchdown
one,
machine.
because we didn't have a true number one when he went down.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
Farouk, with all his faults and the fumbles, he had a couple dynamic plays here and there, but I would have loved to have seen Anthony and Anderson both in at the same time.
When you're talking about close losses, one player can make the difference.
Or Brendan Thompson, who came on at the end of the
Yeah.
season.
I
So
mean, instead, it seemed like he
not
was
to look
healthy
at
all
next year, but if Brendan Thompson gets on the field more and Angelo Anthony's speed, I don't really know what defenses we're going to do with Arnold's arm strength. So that's going to be really fun to watch.
Yeah, the ability to stretch the field should and could be a really lethal threat.
and stretch the field with a quarterback who can get you the ball
Yes.
as well, right?
Yep.
And I think that, and back to what you guys said, some great plays, some critical plays for us, both good and bad. I think overall, relatively disappointing season for Jaleel Farouk when I think comes in as the highly touted receiver, as kind of that stable point of that group, and makes a great play late against Texas, made some competitive catches, but overall, even from a statistical standpoint, definitely not a season that I think we were expecting for him, and I definitely not a season that he was expecting for himself.
Well, and critical turnovers, not just in the bowl game, but obviously in the bowl game, throughout the entire season, just critical, bad positions to have turnovers. Luckily, they came in a couple times in games that didn't matter, like Tulsa, but it just
But in the
speaks to
games
the
they did,
shortcoming.
like against Kansas,
Yeah.
where, I mean, it is honestly the difference in a game at that point.
some of it Lebby by running him as running back, but the other was not, and so it was an interception.
I think some players just, you want players to step up and fill a role that was filled by somebody else, but some players, it's just not what they are.
Mhm.
And I think Farouk is a good second receiver, third receiver. He's not a number one.
Mhm.
I'm not saying he can't make that jump and become that guy,
Yeah, he's not there.
but when Anthony went down and you start being the guy that gets the safety help over the top, or you start getting the number one corner, and he just wasn't good enough for that.
That room is so deep.
And that's okay, though.
Like that, right?
Yeah, that's okay.
Too. I mean, we had the kid from Purdue. I mean, you've got guys coming back like Jaden Gibson, who didn't get on the field a lot, who are going to be pushing for a job.
Anderson.
Anthony's coming back.
Hadaway.
Anderson's going to not be on the field. He's
Hopefully
gonna
we
be
still
a
have
lot,
Hadaway.
hopefully. So that room is going to be really competitive. And I hope, to what we've been kind of talking about with the defense, I hope we can get to a level of sustainability there where we do have solid depth in that room, because you go down a couple guys and all of a sudden you're running out the Michael Joneses and stuff like that, where you don't want those particular guys being the guys making
Well,
plays.
And another area before I want to get those defensive stats that are so impressive and how big of a jump we made from year 1 to year 2 under Venables. But before that, let's talk about a room that we had so much confidence in going into the season that didn't materialize, and that'd be running back. Now we a little bit of shake-up, some guys in the portal, they're leaving, but some really good recruits coming in. That has another chance of being a very strong room. I think there's every reason to have an expectation that our running back position is very strong and very deep. Not to say that in any way DeMarco Murray's on some kind of a hot seat, but he is in a position where he needs to get those guys performing. And we have to have that performance. We're going to have that performance against SEC defenses. If we don't, we're in trouble. So we're going to have consistency. We're going to have a clear plan of some kind. I think it needs to be a number one, maybe a close number two running back with a good solid number three. You might be able to do it with a 1-2 punch that is really interchangeable, but you've got to have depth and you've got to have consistency.
So that's exactly what I was going to say with the plan is that's kind of where I felt that room was at all season. There seemed not to be very much vision in what we wanted our running backs to be, whether it be, and maybe even at times, the running backs not having the actual vision they need to have on the field to be productive running backs. So, I wish Tawi Walker all the luck at Wisconsin. I think that's a great pickup. I think he'll do well in that system. But to your point, Steve, I want to go into next season with that clear path of what we want to accomplish in that room. I mean, Oklahoma's known for good running backs.
Yeah.
And
we better be
we don't
known
have
for
good
it in the
backs.
SEC.
Yeah, but we need to show off our skill, and there are some guys in that room that are skillful. So
I'll tell you what I don't like scheme-wise, and Lebby's gone now, so hopefully this changes, but RPOs are the new hip thing in college football for the last 3 or 4 years, and it's even transitioned to the NFL, but it's too much ask of multiple groups of positions. So the offensive line, if it's an RPO, when the ball's snapped, they don't know if they need to blow the guy off the ball. They don't even know if they need to back up and block for the quarterback. The running back, they don't know if they're taking the handoff or if they're going to have to fake it and squirt out and, go out for a pass or chip block somebody coming through. The wide receivers are going to run their routes, but they may also be run blocking at the same time. It's too much. To me, it's too much of an ask on all three of those position groups to base everything that they're doing off of what the quarterback sees. And when everybody
that's the fourth ask is the quarterback.
Yeah,
You've got to have a quarterback to
multiple
make the decision.
you can't all be on the same page in that situation, because that's literally 11 guys having to figure something out in a half a second after the ball's snapped. And to me, that's just not a recipe for success. I much would rather have the plays called and you do the check on me offense.
Yeah.
look to the side. The coach says, go ahead and remember we're running, or you check it to the audible, and it's, either run the opposite side or
Just do the play.
or do the play or whatever. And to me, that seems like your best chance for success as an offense is when you don't have to have 11 guys all having to think
Yes.
the same thing randomly.
I think it's a great point and probably underappreciated, especially when you talk about the NFL is doing it. When you try to transition or translate things that work at the NFL level and are needed at the NFL level to the college level, it doesn't always work for a number of reasons. One would be those guys in the NFL typically are actually high IQ guys. You wash out if you're in the NFL and you don't have a quick mind.
Yeah.
And obviously you're a tremendous athlete. So you have to have all of those skills. Plus you're going up against really, really good guys you've got to think to the next 3D chess level. In college, especially if you're one of the more talented teams, you don't have to do that stuff. Why are you overcomplicating it?
Yeah.
Just line up and
Beat your
out-talent
guy.
them and beat your guy.
Yeah.
And in college, one guy doesn't do his assignment and it can be lethal. In the pros, there's a guy back there to help out and to make that, cover up some mistakes. It's not going to happen in college. So I think that's a good point that it probably is not something well suited to college and definitely not well suited to a team who should tend to be the team as talented as or more talented than the opponent.
I mean, I think the guy that really kicked it all off was Chip Kelly at Oregon. They were really the first RPO guys that I can think of, but they out-talented almost every team in the Pac-12.
Yeah, by far.
But yeah, I mean,
And it's a new look that
they were getting the fastest guys.
Brand new thing.
It was a brand new thing. He goes to NFL, and the first season he was at the Eagles.
It worked great.
It worked great.
Yeah.
And then everybody figured it out, and then nothing worked anymore. And then even at UCLA, he hasn't been as successful.
Where the Pac-12 has been better
Right.
than they were when he was.
But it's also like a Leach situation, when you're running the air raid, it works for a couple of years, but then it starts being figured out. I think the RPOs have already run its course personally,
That's good.
and we need to get back to just regular football.
Yeah, I think by far the most frustrating part of that play design is not allowing your offensive line to know what they're doing. Because even in our bowl game, I don't remember how long the play was, but we had a successful play down the field, and we got an illegal way down
in
the
that
field.
field, right?
And they could have called that on every team all season long, way more than they even do, because for that exact
Because they don't
reason,
know.
what am I doing? Who am I blocking?
You're lost.
Am I waiting? What am I doing here as an offensive lineman? And if you're just going to blow off the ball, just blow off the ball.
Yep.
And get your lanes open.
Don't overcomplicate.
To run it. You're running back too. Like, what am I getting the ball? Am I not getting the ball? Yes, you're getting the ball and you're running.
Here's where you're going to
a
run.
left guard and left tackle.
Yep.
This is where you're going. Get there fast.
In the extreme, when you have
If you can bounce it outside, go ahead and bounce it outside. But
that's
this is your area to run the ball.
run, and you're going to get the ball. When in the extreme, when you have an Adrian Peterson, a Joe Mixon, those type of running backs, and they don't have to be that good, but when you've got the talent there, just give them the ball. You don't have to do all this stuff. Just give them the ball. Block and give them the ball, and let them make a guy miss.
AD probably would have hated.
Oh my God,
It would have
so
been a
frustrated.
crime to
Yeah,
RPO
it-
Adrian
it
Peterson.
would have. And that's probably true of so many guys that are not at that level, but are still really, really talented.
And I listened to Gabe and Teddy this week in the post game, and Teddy made a great point about you're letting the defense dictate what you do, because when the quarterback is looking, it was kind of some Jay liked the Baylor offense, which Levy didn't run the full Bryles offense, but if there's 5 guys in the box, you run. If there's 6 or more, then you pass or whatever. But even in that case, the defense is dictating what you're doing. But if all 11 guys don't see it, then you're in no man's lane.
You don't want to rely on all 11 guys. I like your point about just look to me.
Yeah.
But
And have
even
the guy
Baylor
give you
thing
the signal and go.
The Baylor thing wasn't it was a combination of what you're talking about. It was count the numbers, but here's the definitive play.
Yeah, it's A or B.
Yeah.
It's A or B. It's not a combo of the two. Let's see who moves where. You look at it, this is a throw. So everyone knows, okay, this is a throw.
But then also
So our offensive line is blocking for pass.
the defenses know what's happening, and all the coaching staffs, and they've told their guys, you drop off like you're going to be before pre-snap. The defensive end stands up, so you think, oh, maybe he's going to drop in coverage. but really he's not, and they're bringing
That's probably why
they're bringing safety up.
That's probably why the RPO was created,
Right, but
to counteract
Yeah.
how successful that counting the box system was.
yeah,
So they had to say, okay, how are we going to counteract them knowing
Yeah,
what we're
probably
doing?
an overcomplication of how to counteract it versus just sitting back and drawing something
there's
up.
a lot more disguises in the defense now than there ever has been. I feel like
Yeah.
as far as
Oh, I think so too.
dropping defensive ends and pass coverage and blitzing a safety.
You just have
or-
more
and
athletic
stuff
players
that.
too that
Yeah.
can do more roles.
So I mean, it's hard, but I hope we go away from RPOs.
Well, talking about defense, give us some information on defense because we made a significant leap in defense this year. It shows up in the stats. I think it's even more pronounced when you look at the quality of play down the stretch and the fact that we had some key injuries and we still were able to sustain ourselves at this higher level.
Yeah, so from 2022 to 2023, we made this is a national ranking. We made a 50-spot jump in rushing yards per play.
From what to what?
From 4.48 to 3.91.
That's a big
So it's
difference.
that's a full half yard
That's a big difference.
for a run.
Where does that put us in the rankings?
49th.
49th.
So we went so it wasn't quite a 50. It was from 94th to 49th.
Okay, so
So
It's a big move.
It's a big move. In passing yards per play, it wasn't as large of an improvement. We went from 58th to 42nd, and it was only 0.2 yards per pass.
we also had a corner that, I mean, Gentry was a sophomore and got injured, and then you're playing Kenai Walker, you're playing.
Yeah, arguably our best corner from what we saw early in the season, right? I mean, he was thrown at, and he was by far the one I trusted the most to go up and defend a pass.
So then you're running like young kids out.
What I do find interesting is that's a much closer margin of yardage, but still a 16-team
Rank
jump.
jump. Yeah.
So compared to run, where a half yard's pretty significant, 0.2 was still a 16-team jump. So who's to say another 0.2 wouldn't be 16 more jump, and all of a sudden you're a top 25 defense in the pass.
Yep.
So it's really not that big. And then total yards per play, we went from 82nd to 54th, from 5.75 to 5.4. And then scoring, actually scoring had the biggest jump of all. We went from exactly 30 points a game last year, ranked 99th in the country, to 23.5 and ranked 49th.
That's very big.
So
That's my number one category.
that is a 50-point
That's huge.
Well, and you go back and you look.
ranking jump.
You go back and look. I mean, up until that Texas game, which again, opponents were less than what we saw in the back half. Obviously, if our defense even plays to the 3/4 of the level that they were playing in those first 6 games, those stats are just much better in my opinion. And we fell off pretty significantly in the secondary in the back half of the season because of injuries. Inexperience, etc.
Experience depth caught up with us
Yeah.
finally.
So that was tough. I mean, but to be able, like you said, to be able to have the great front half that we have, and I'll even chalk it up to a relatively poor back half from a overall secondary, even defensive unit as a whole. To be able to sustain those and make those jumps, even with that back half of the entire season, is a great testament to what we're establishing and what we're kind of solidifying with this squad.
Yeah, the year before, allowing 30 points a game, that's right at the cusp of we might win this game, we might not win this
Yep.
game. But for this year, to be at 23.5, that kind of bodes really with what our record is.
Yeah,
where we
it really does.
beat Kansas and beat Oklahoma State. 23.5 is enough to win every game.
I was just about to say the same thing.
Every single game.
If you could lock that in,
I would
just for the future
I would
with the
take
offense we should
23.5.
expect to have, we should win every game.
I would take 23.5 for the rest of OU history.
yeah,
And there's a big thing we haven't talked about. What is the most important position in the Brent Venables defense? It's the cheetah. And we lost Harrington
Right off the get-go.
Yeah.
3 games into the season.
3, yeah.
Yep.
I mean, what difference could he have made in some of those tighter games?
No, it was game 2. We lost him in SMU, didn't we?
It was either 2 or 3.
He had an interception to seal the not
Seal the game
but
against
to end the
SMU,
game
against
somebody.
20-6 or something like
20
that.
to
And he seemed hobbled, but not
Yeah,
like,
11
hey,
something
this is a season ending.
and it was season ending. Yeah,
Yeah, so I mean,
that's a huge difference.
it would be remarkable to see what difference a healthy Harrington
Who sounds like
at
we
the
will
cheetah
have.
position.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's
And as you said, preseason, Teddy, who goes to a whole bunch of the practice and everything, he said like that is the heart of the defense. Like Harrington was playing that good
Yeah.
and that well. Like this is like the number one thing that's gonna make this defense an elite defense was how well Harrington was playing.
And the way it has a knock-on impact is it causes other people to have to play more than they'd have to play and have to do more than they're going to have to
Yeah,
do.
because the best example, which could have turned out good for him or for us, but Kendall Dolby,
Mhm.
yeah,
was
early
a
in
corner.
the season.
He's a cornerback.
Right.
He was the JUCO Defensive Player of the Year last year as a corner, not a cheetah, not a run guy. But once they started to see that Dasan McCullough wasn't ready for coverages yet, they've had to find someone to move in there. It probably would have been Bowen, but he was banged up. Brazilian banged up.
season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Dolby did a great job the back half of the year filling in, had a fantastic bowl game.
Yeah.
Kendall Dolby did.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that might be his new spot.
Yeah.
But that's just alluding to what you're talking about. It makes you shift players around.
Yeah.
And
Harrington's the guy that you don't necessarily have to bring off the field.
no, that was the whole
McCullough
point.
was the guy that was in there for rundowns and maybe pass rush,
Mhm.
and then Dolby was your coverage guy, whereas Harrington is both.
Could do both.
Hey, Harrington's a legit 6'2", 215, where
Yeah.
So if he gets
He is
that
a
extra,
DB.
if he gets the medical year, which he should,
yeah.
that
He used
On
to be a
top-
safety, right?
Yeah.
on top of having, well, and to me also Pearson didn't really do what he needed to do. I don't feel like.
Yeah.
I
His
think-
coverage skills hurt.
I think if Bowen would have been injury free, he would have taken that job probably game 5, and you'd have had Bowen and Bowen both back there. So going into next season, we're not going to go too far into it, but getting all those D linemen back, that could come back are coming back. Terry, Lacey,
Downs, Mason Thomas.
about Ford. Is he gone?
Ford
we don't
can come
know.
back. He hasn't.
We don't know.
I don't see where it sounds like.
I don't see why he wouldn't come back. Yeah.
Then you're going to add, the David Stone and the Jackson coming in,
And then a PJ.
PJ. So your defensive line looks stacked. You're going to have Woody's coming back, which we had mixed feelings about that. You like the experience. We
Like the depth.
We also noticed that early in the season, people were not throwing at him at all, and they were more throwing towards Gentry, who was tackling everybody. And then later in the season,
Intercepting her.
that season, they started throwing towards Woody. So you have Woody and Gentry back. Hopefully Harrington's back. If you've got Bowen and Bowman both at safety, but you're adding in McCullough, you're adding in Dolby. I mean,
Robert Spears Jennings.
the extra linebacker is really the only question mark is, does Kanik take the step forward, or does Kip Lewis take that spot for good?
RSJ may be maybe playing the best out of all of our safeties.
I mean, it's going to be a real.
He's playing spectacular.
It's a good. We're
It's a good problem.
we're finally getting to the. It's a good problem to have on defense. Where
And that's what you have to
When's
have
the last
depth.
time we've been able to say that?
what star safety do you play?
2010?
Yeah.
especially about our defensive backfield.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we haven't said that in a decade.
Not across the board like that. We had a Sanchez. We had guys in spots, but we didn't have the depth. We didn't have the full scale. This is
No,
There was a
you've got-
noticeable weakness somewhere
Yeah.
in that
Like, if
defensive backfield.
if all three are healthy and you expect progress from a Bowen and even a Robert Spears Jennings, you got those three guys battling for a safety spot, for two safety spots those are elite players.
and they will play significant downs in all cases.
Exactly. And on top of that, so we saw it a lot in the bowl, but how much do you think that 3-4-4 that we ran in the bowl game with the three safeties on the field, especially with the talent we have in that group, how much do we think we'll see that? And again, not to go too far into next year, but
Yeah, I don't know if that was
predictions,
a
but you
bowl
think that
game
was just
Arizona
let's
thing?
see how it
Like
goes.
we're not worried about the running game thing.
Well, it depends. If we got the defensive line talent too, I'm not saying that you're going to line up and do that against every opponent in the SEC, but there's definitely teams that you would love to have that fourth guy in the backfield, and you
And it
can
gives
have
you an
that.
opportunity to bring a linebacker up who can be
Yeah.
a little bit faster. And
Yeah,
rush
it's
a little
it's only a 3-4-4 until the ball snapped,
Right.
and then all of a sudden 5 guys are rushing the quarterback. So
It'll be interesting. It's exciting. The defensive side of the ball is very exciting.
Yeah, there's several young players that you hear very highly things said about them that really didn't even get much on the field this year. I mean, we haven't heard, knock on wood, but I mean, Kobe McKenzie's a damn good football player.
Yeah.
And Kanik is still learning. It
Which
did
is
hurt.
scary.
It
And
did
he
hurt us.
could make the move just like Stutzman made. And if he can step up, and I don't mean he's going to be the next Stutzman, but if he can be he can make a significant leap for himself, then that's a big, solid contribution.
There's a couple interesting things that are going to take place because I do think when we had Kip out there and you had to move Danny, it was robbing Peter to pay Paul a little bit.
Yeah, there were some deficiencies.
We had more miscommunication issues. And if Danny's, you have to do the math, but do you want 100% Danny at this spot and a 60% guy here, or do you want an 80% Danny and a 70% guy? I think that's what we battled with a little bit there. So I don't know if there's going to be any off-season changes with that.
Not to
Or
mention
maybe Kip can just put on weight.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about transfers. Let's talk about where we are in the transfer portal. And that'll tie into, I think, our deficiency that we haven't mentioned, which is offensive line. And I've got some thoughts on offensive line and why it's a deficiency and what we need to do to get to the next level. But let's talk about where we are in the transfer portal, what we've lost, what we've gained. So,
it's just lost. I don't know that we've lost any contributors.
Outside of Green.
outside of Kip.
Okay, yeah, you're right. Other than that, it was
Walker's arguable. Walker's an arguable loss, but we all kind of saw it coming.
and we've got a lot of stuff coming in there.
Yep.
I think that we're adding guys where we need to add them with a lot to be seen about who we can get in terms of offensive line. That's the big area of deficiency. Obviously, that was what killed us in the bowl game. And it doesn't have to be, even if you said you're locked into the guys you have to expect with an off season, they're going to be better than they were in the bowl game. They're probably not to the level you need them to be at and want them to be at.
Yeah, I think Everett, just like most guys, are going to benefit from additional snaps and another year of Smitty.
He looks like a Ty Darlington type build, like not very big.
Yeah, he's not. That's
So,
why
I mean-
that's why when we had him at guard, we had to play him at guard for a little bit there. Was it against Texas? And he was getting pushed into the backfield. That's when Kane Green really came in, was
Yeah.
because he was getting pushed so far because he wasn't big enough for guard.
Yeah.
But we just weren't ready to throw Green or somebody out there for the Texas game.
Yeah.
But I'm going to guess that he's our center next year, and he'll just have more experience. He was a center before, but we needed him to come in and,
Yeah, that's
and
his
play other
natural,
positions.
natural quote unquote
Um,
natural position, right?
But he just has to get, bigger, stronger, faster, just like everybody else does.
Other notable transfer ad, I mean, the Purdue wide receiver.
The Purdue wide receiver, I would assume, is the next Drake, but is faster and better.
That's
Now,
probably
some of the intangibles you can't
Yeah.
take away from Drake and his hands and always open his heart, but this kid's a better receiver.
and speed.
Yeah.
Right. And that's probably been our, if I can think about it, it's probably been our biggest ad through the portal, right?
So far.
I mean, that's someone who Texas really wanted. That's the number one wide receiver in the portal,
Yes.
right? And again, like you said earlier in the pod, massive testament to Emmett Jones and what he's doing in that room.
Oh yeah, that's for a whole different pod, but man, Emmett Jones is trying to be poached currently right now by a unnamed SEC school with an elephant as their logo. But we've got to hold on to him. He's just done so well. The improvement of the players themselves, the recruiting is
I
insane.
have hope that just like Brent, something that we wanted to see, we talked about it early on, and we're seeing it now, retains players. I think he can retain coaches that he wants.
Yeah, I think Brent's probably got an idea that, like, listen, dude, if you're going to come coach here, you're not taking a lateral move.
Yeah.
If you get a job that's an improvement,
By all means.
yeah, go. Happy for you.
Yeah.
We'll celebrate it for you. We'll put it out on all the Twitters and everything there is, because that's great news for
Yeah,
the
if you're going to be a
We're
co-OC
coaching you
or
up.
an OC.
You're growing as a coach. You move on to a better job. That's great.
And we want that problem.
But like it or, Alabama fans might not want to hear this, but a wide receiver coach at Alabama and wide receiver coach at OU is a lateral move.
It is.
If you're not getting a title, you're not
Lateral
getting play calling
best.
duties, you're not.
because here, to one extent or another, you're kind of you've got a lot of equity, and so you go there, expectations are extremely high in an extremely competitive environment that you might get washed out because of bad luck. You're going to get more grace here. All else equal, this is the place to be.
If I would live in Norman or Tuscaloosa, I mean, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah,
I would
it's not. It's not like you're saying we're going to go to someplace fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there, though. I think we've got that. As far as other portal stuff goes,
I saw we got a kid that's a local kid from Utah. I mean, he's from Bethany.
yeah,
Him from Utah. I don't know, 3-star probably guy.
yeah, he's got. I mean, he's not going to come in next year and play. I mean, he's not a.
Didn't we?
And he's a
didn't we
preferred
preferred
walk-on.
walk-on.
Yeah, he's not even. He's not
They
even
went from
taking college.
scholarship to preferred walk-on.
Yeah.
So
Which
That's
That's a
something.
huge get for the.
oh no
a
no
huge get.
I can't think of any of the players' names or their positions or whatever, but our preferred walk-on game under Brent is it's actually
It's
ridiculous.
unmatched.
It
It's
is.
unmatched.
It's
It
like
is-
Nebraska.
It is
from the 90s.
amazing. Yes, it is.
insane.
I mean, you've got the Oklahoma Player of the Year is a preferred walk-on.
Andy Bass.
Andy Bass.
Yeah.
There's a receiver that we took out of somewhere in Dallas that had 26 scholarship offers to schools of the
Group of five.
North Texas
Yeah.
SMUs of the world, and as a preferred walk-on. I mean, and there's 15 other guys that are just
Oh, yeah,
like
there are. There's Ace Hodges.
legit ballers.
Out of Cassidy. There's just so many guys that you start stacking up, and they want to come play and want to contribute. And that's probably that could be a competitive advantage that he may be realizing, Brent and company, to say, hey, we can develop a lot of these guys, and we understand they're gonna work here, or they're gonna get a great year here, and then they can go on to something
Yeah, I
different
think
in the transfer world.
for our team, looking at it, you're talking about real deal scout teams, right? You're talking about competitive,
Which is very necessary.
NIL has changed a lot of this because
Yeah.
it's not like these kids going to get a bunch of money, but
They're
you
getting
can
some.
they're getting their scholarship probably.
yeah, you can say you
it's
come to
basically-
preferred walk on and we'll get you enough NIL that it'll cover your scholarship.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It'll cover your tuition.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now, like you said, the old school before scholarship limitations.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, even during
You've got
scholarship limitations,
I mean, you've
that's
got
when they did that.
You've got your 85 scholarship
Yeah.
players now, and you've got
Well, that's
20
when they
more
were doing that. That's when Nebraska was doing
scholarship
that.
worthy players on the team now
That was exactly what
because
they were
of
doing.
NIL.
And it's a great situation where you can then see who works, see who doesn't, help them transition to somewhere else. It's a great machine if you get it working. One of the areas we'll need to get it working, I think, is offensive line. If I'm going to be charitable, some might say being a homer about it for the sake of Bedenbaugh and the entire offensive line situation. When you're in a situation where OU has been recruiting-wise, where we have been in the woods, lost in many cases over going on now 5 or 6 years, where I think we didn't have a coherent idea of what recruiting should look like, where Lincoln was recruiting anybody that had big-time stars by their name and was a skill player, and anybody else wasn't that important. When it wasn't a holistic look of what we're trying to build, you have limited resources and you have to focus where you have to focus. I think, again, to be charitable, Brent comes in and says, all right, what do I need to build first? What do I want to build my foundation on? Where do I focus my resources? And the last place happens to be offensive line. That's been the thing that's been overlooked and neglected. Now's the time to focus resources there. And my hope is, as you rebuild the machine, and you look at the Georgias and the Alabamas, they're not in this situation. They get to go and rebuild. For one, they don't have to rebuild that much because they've got the depth.
It's not a rebuild.
That they've always got somebody lined up. But they also can spread it around and work off of their brand name. We aren't yet at that situation where we hope to get to, and we're getting towards, I believe. And so I think now the focus has to be on offensive line to say we need to put resources into this, go and shore up the deficiencies that we've got there. If nothing else, lack of depth would be a deficiency. And hopefully also with offensive coordinator have something that's a coherent focus all the way through the offense, not just at the offensive coordinator level, but here's everybody in a position coach who knows what we're trying to do, knows how we can get it all together. Kind of comes back to what you were saying, Lucas, about let's have a game plan that is going to be a method for success everywhere. And let's have offensive linemen who can succeed in the system versus telling them, all right, here's what you got to learn. It's a really deep playbook, and you don't know what you're going to do when the ball's snapped.
Yeah, so we've got, I think we've mentioned briefly a pod or two ago, the Michigan State kid who played, 22, 24 games in a row for Michigan State in tackle. We got...
The other Michigan State kid.
The other Michigan State kid.
No, we don't have two. They're not both.
No, we got two. We didn't get
the
three.
third.
We didn't get the third.
No. We only got one of the...
Oh, really?
Yeah. There was just two. We only got one of the two.
No, there was two that came together, and there's a third that decided to stay at Michigan State.
No, the other kid's from somewhere else.
All three offensive linemen?
No, the other kid's from North Texas.
Well,
We only have two. We only have two.
Center.
No, he's a guard, and he was like a freshman All-American type guard for them. I think he probably comes in and plays right away at guard for us this year. I'm pretty sure he was recruited by Seth. Didn't play for him, or was redshirted maybe his last year, but didn't play for him this past season, of course.
Right.
so he'll be our right guard?
I think so. Everett, Everett's going to be our center, I would think. Sexton probably moves to left tackle. You've got...
And everybody gets stronger. Hopefully everybody gets into a system where they can understand where they want to be. I'd like to see us understand who is in what position earlier in the season. Stick with that.
Before the season.
And get it before the season. And get it developed so that when you're in early season, mid-season, you're rolling.
Yeah.
So I had good kind of banter with some fans about Beanbo because there seems to be kind of a no middle ground with him. There's just staunch supporters, and then there's people that feel like we could do better, or certainly he needs to do better.
I feel like I'm kind of the middle ground. I've wavered really hard back and forth.
Because here's my take on it. And my argument with some people was, I get that he turns a player or two every season into more than what they were maybe projected to be, and I'm glad that those players make it to the league. I want 5 good guys that work well together.
You want 28?
I
great.
don't care.
You want 2018?
We're great, of course, great, but
But not necessarily elite. So 18 and 17
I don't
was
want-
filled with elite. You want. I say when I think of good, I think of like average
okay. What I mean is,
contributors.
I want
solid.
I don't care. We have a first rounder in Guyton,
Mm-hmm.
and then 4 dudes, right?
Yeah.
Like I'd rather have 5
Third rounders.
really good 3rd, 4th round guys that play well together
I agree.
and make just a cohesive offensive line.
You want a unit.
Now, of course, you want 5 Guytons. That's obviously
absolutely.
right. Of course, that's the truth. But so here's part of my argument with what frustrates me with Beanbo. So here's his hit rate on high school kids. Okay, and this is it's pretty bad. Really it is. So just saying guys that like barely see the field or even are just serviceable playing time guys from 2018 out of 4 high school recruits, it's basically 0. 0 of the 4 made any impact. 2019 again, 0 of the 4 made any impact at all. From 2020, you had Rame and Harrison. From 2021, you were 0 for 2 again in high school, but you brought in Morris from Tennessee. And then from the 22 class, you had Sexton and Taylor, but Taylor's still not even really getting on the field that much. So it's just a Sexton. I mean, you're talking about like 3 out of 12, 15 high school players that are turning into contributors on this offense.
Yeah.
And that is not good enough hit rate.
It's not good enough.
Well, and it speaks to what we talked about after the bowl game is all the hit rate and stuff and all that. Like, Beanbo's going and recruiting guys, and there's an offensive line room, and regardless of what's out there on the field on Saturdays, the stuff that we're seeing on the field doesn't look like there's any secondary development. There's no development past those guys who are out there, and even with some of the guys that are out there, but put even a good unit out there, right? Guys that, they work pretty well together. There's some deficiencies, but they work. Outside of that, it's been a long time that we've been able to say, oh, if so-and-so goes down, next guy up is this guy, and we feel okay about it. Like, it's next guy up, and like, oh, shit.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, we're in trouble. Even with Caden Green, like, we were like, oh my gosh, like, Caden Green's out there. Oh my, like, a true freshman is out there, and we don't know what's going to happen. Luckily, it works out, but you got to get some of those guys. Like, you got to hope that the Eddie Pierre-Louis guy is the next Caden Green. And you got to hope that it's not just Eddie Pierre-Louis, it's most of the guys that are coming in to say, hey, if this kid has to come in and play and has to step up, we can trust him to an extent. Not to the extent that he's going to be a veteran and a seasoned starter.
Weakness.
But yeah, he needs to be someone who can hold the line. And you can still do your job effectively as an offense.
It's hard to say. Maybe they're still tinkering with, because of the portal, what is the ultimate best thing to do? I mean, maybe you can build your offensive line through the portal every year. I don't know.
Want to do that.
I don't think you want to, but maybe you can.
That's why
I don't know.
That's why Steve's point is so important. It reminds me of like a work situation where
we only took Sexton and Taylor that 2 years ago.
Yeah, right.
We took 2 offensive linemen in an entire class.
And it's like this company or a program is failing, and Britt comes in and he looks at the whole thing holistically and says, where are the big points of emphasis that we need to save this thing? And they focus on defense. They focus on wide receiver. They focus on these other areas. And Bill has this track record of, hey, look at the guys that I've put in the league. Look at what I've done. Like, you don't need to worry about me. I got this. All right. The whole program is fixed out of those other areas that we've identified. Now let's all look at Bill and say, all right, man, like, we've got our house in order here. What are you doing to make us better?
Or what do you need?
And what do you
need us to do? Like, how much NIL and how many visits do we need to make to get the guys?
Next year, I'm not kidding. Let's just say Arnold progresses how we think he's going to progress or look. I think it's all on Bill Beanbo.
Yeah.
If we are 10-2 or 7-5.
Oh, I think you're right.
To God.
Oh, I think you're totally right. And that's where I put him. I talked to a friend at work and I say, in my mind, not that I'm a decision maker here, but he is on some kind of a probation. And if you want to call that a warm seat, that becomes a hot seat.
People call you crazy for that.
See,
insane for that. He's gonna have another first rounder this year, Steve.
Yeah, I don't see it that way. I mean, to me,
he's gonna have 3 guys drafted this year.
That's fine. You need to put it on the field, and it needs to be such a lockdown situation that we don't look at that as a weak unit. We should never look at a whole unit and say that whole unit is weak. And that's what we've been able to say.
It is by far the weakest.
And I've got faith in the guy, and I've got faith in him. I think they can do it. I think they can get there. But I'm saying this is the make or break for him, that he's probably got to do it, or I'm going to get on the we got to make a change bandwagon. And I don't want to do that, but that's where I think we are.
It's not going to matter for this next season, but the high school recruits currently going through like the Under Armour practices and stuff, the bowl game and stuff today, they're performing very, very well and even exceeding expectations. And that's not even counting EPL, who might be the best of the bunch physically. But that doesn't do anything for next year.
No.
And, man, the North Texas freshman All-American type kid, he could be great. It's still a North Texas guy that's about to go block Alabama and Tennessee and South Carolina. And
dudes that were born at like 250 have only gotten bigger since.
This seems strange to me, and I wish I could talk to Gabe about it, but when he looked at film from the Michigan State kid that played tackle for them for the last 24 games that transferred in here, he doesn't seem as a day one starter. Now, I don't know if that's just Gabe maybe saying he's not up to his level of what he thinks an OU right tackle should look like, but I'm going to think if you can play 24 games in the Big Ten as a starter right tackle, you can probably play okay.
Yeah.
Here, you're not going to just be like,
guy.
"Whoa, what is this? What's going on?"
Right? Is this
there's good defensive players in the Big Ten. So,
but I was reviewing film and saying, well, he takes a little bit too long of a stride on this, and he breaks it down for like all the basic movements. But that's where Beanbo comes in, hopefully, and fixes some of those.
Yeah. And
but maybe Bill is great at that. Maybe he's good at the little tweaks and like the technique part of it. Yeah. But when it comes to what we're doing on Saturday and the guys that we're putting out there, I don't know if that's his strong.
But
suit.
maybe if we have,
so weird though because
But it's also
those
RPO
lines-
stuff.
as I was gonna say,
Yeah.
and the
If
lack
you
of
fix
GC
that-
counters and that stuff.
If you fix the RPO problem that I think we've had for the last 2 seasons, and these guys know what they're doing at the snap of the ball, they can get significantly better out of the guys that are on staff or on the roster now.
And that's what we said at Florida
then what the
State.
other
That's what
guys
we
are
said against
adding.
Florida State. We ran a base offense, and we just let our guys go and eat, and they did.
and now that's what
and it was
potentially
great.
we're getting.
That's
Hopefully.
the best offensive line performance that we've had to date since then, right? Like since that, I can't think of a better offensive line performance that we had all season this year that matched the offensive line performance we had against
Texas,
Florida
they
State.
did good Texas.
We held our own against
Texas was great. That's true. Yeah,
With a good
we did
defensive
shut
line.
Sweat down, but outside of that, I mean, and that's
I don't
running.
think it's
freshmen
so
out
much, and I think we're being nitpicky because we should
be, though.
We should have better than what we have. The line was good this year. Okay, the numbers bear that out. Okay,
Yeah.
we weren't sacked an excessive amount of times. We did have enough success in the run game. It's just
late
as we mentioned on other aspects, we're more talented than everybody else. So it should look
we had
better
a standard. We have a standard.
But next
So-
year we won't be.
Exactly.
We won't be more talented than probably 4 of the teams you play.
We'll be right there.
We've got a lot of time to talk about it. I'm excited. I mean, I'm excited about it. Like we need to look more at it, look at it more, and maybe don't need to, but I'm going to try to look at it more from it's an opportunity. It's not it's not just an opportunity for the kids that are in that room. It's an opportunity for Beatonbow to go and say, "Hey, shut up on your podcast. I am who I know I am, and who the
guy who got the Joe Moore.
who my loyalists say I am, and go put out a line that can compete in the SEC."
I mean, I thought this year I thought the offense was going to look completely different than it looked. I thought we were going to run for 300 yards a game after that Florida State game.
Yeah.
Like I'm
We
like,
all did.
okay, these guys haven't played together. They haven't gelled. They're not used to each other. They're all going to be back. This going to be this entire line for next year.
It's Sawchuk, it's Barnes.
We kind of skipped over the running back talk. We just
Right.
flew into something else. But that whole scenario, I don't know what went down with the running backs this year. I don't know if it's a DeMarco thing. I don't know if it's a Levy thing. I don't know if it's an injury thing. I just hope it's not that way again next year.
Gotta hope it's a
I'm
thing.
willing to give him the benefit of the doubt that it was a Levy thing. Levy, and I'm saying Levy design, Levy theory, Levy whatever, and that it's an opportunity to succeed now because that, what I think is a failed model and will, I think, fail miserably at Mississippi State, and especially will because of the competition they're going to face. I think we're going to see something very different, and that's where my tolerance is going to be done if we don't see that kind of production because we've got to see something different. And all of those other guys, starting with Seth Luttrell, has got to be really serious about it, and that's a really tough spot to be in when you're an in-law family member with the guy, but you got to be professional and say you are or are not the guy for the job. And I give him every chance to be the guy for the job. I really hope he is the guy for the job, but I'm concerned, and I'm definitely
I
scared.
think it got sexy to have a multiple running back system, right? Or specifically for plays or for downs or for whatever. And I think when you really just go back to it, you've got to have a guy and give him the ball.
It's the vision that we
You got to have a guy.
eventually got to.
Yeah. I mean, you have to
It's
give
Belichick.
someone, maybe of all positions on the field, excluding a quarterback, that player has to get in the groove.
Yeah.
They have to.
You have to get
Think
rhythm.
about what we did was it the 20 season when Ramondre was suspended?
Yeah, and comes in
And we looked horrible for five or six games, and then he came back, and
immediately.
our rushing offense tripled.
Yeah.
Once Ramondre got in there,
Well, and
you can't have Mixon and Perine back there. That's the
the
fantasy.
dream.
That's
Yeah,
a fantasy.
that's- yeah.
line. You're not going to have Mixon and Perine in there that are two different kind of backs that are both explosive and incredible at all facets of the game. You're probably just going to have one guy that you hope can be the dude, and then he gets spelled by somebody.
And Sawchuk, when he can stay healthy, it looks like he can be the dude.
Yeah,
think you're
and
right.
it's I know we're trying to wrap this topic up to move on, but real quick, to a lesser extent, it's it's similar to the problem that Oklahoma State faced with their 3-quarterback system that
Yep.
they're running and wouldn't make a decision. And someone finally came in the room and said, "We're going with this. We're going with Bowman,
Bowman.
and this is what we're doing." Someone needs to do that. Put their foot down and say, "This Sawchuk's our guy. He's the guy we're going to ride with. Yes, these other guys are going to be here in support when he's gassed or whatever else. But if he's ready to go and his legs are good, he's going. Put your foot down. Run the offense. Run through one guy.
Kennedy Brooks.
Yeah, have a Kennedy Brooks
He was
out
a
there.
dude.
We are Oklahoma. We can have a dude. Like, there's no excuse not to. So
And who's going to emerge and who's going to be my guy, figure it out and figure it out soon.
Yep.
And let that guy be the guy and let someone else take the position from him, if so be it.
and let those opportunities be there.
Right.
Let the opportunities be there to say, "Hey, we're going to give you guys every opportunity to take it." But
Maybe they did. I mean,
I don't know.
again, maybe that's call it injuries, call it indecisiveness, call it fairness, keeping people on the roster. I don't know what you want to say. We tried to find 3 or 4 guys to be the guy early, and maybe Sawchuk was just too injured to do it. Barnes apparently was injured too much the whole season
Right.
to do it.
And Major just wasn't that guy.
Major just wasn't the guy that I think they'd hoped. Tawi did all those things right that you want to see in practice in different things, but come Saturday, he did good, but he's not.
He's not the guy that you see breaking away in the
And,
secondary to score a touchdown from
so,
60
yeah,
yards out.
Albie does great at Wisconsin.
I
too.
agree.
I do too. I'll be rooting
I
for him
just
for
think
sure.
this. Hopefully, this was an anomaly of a
And guys, we were 10-2.
running back system.
That's what's so crazy. We were 10-2, and
One
again,
play away in 2 games.
one play away in 2 games, and I know it's going to get harder, but we are. I think, like you said, Jay, we're being a little nitpicky, and we should be because we are. We hold a higher
I
standard
just
than a
think
lot of these
the
teams.
stakes are raised.
That's what we do on this podcast, though.
It is
Right. And you know what? 10-2 becomes 12-0 if you get a couple of plays, and that means you're in the playoffs. And let's talk about the playoffs. So the semifinals were this past Monday, and I honestly can't say they could have gone any better than they went, given who was in there. That was exactly what
playoff game. It was awesome.
absolute great football to watch. Just just for a football fan, a sports fan.
Still got to start them earlier.
But you got to start them early. That was a late.
Gotta
night.
start 'em early.
That was a late night.
Florida State deserved to be there, but we would not have gotten to see the quality of Rose Bowl that we saw if Florida State
I
was.
think it would have been. I'll go on this limb. Florida State with all their players, not even their quarterback.
Mhm.
That defense was really, really good.
Yeah.
They might have lost 10-0.
They might
It
have.
might have been a 10-0.
They might have been as competitive as Alabama was. And
I think
Alabama,
the way Milroe played, I think they could have.
yeah. And when you look at the fact that Alabama benefited from 3 horrific punt return mistakes by Michigan, it shouldn't have been as close a game as it was. So it was very good. I'm kind of indifferent on Michigan, but I definitely wanted them to beat Alabama. I wanted Alabama out of the hunt. And I think all good people of faith wanted Texas to lose. And what happened in that Texas game? Tell me, I fell asleep. What did they come back on against Washington? They had the ball. I saw them. They had the ball like the 13-yard line,
Do you remember, Lucas, what happened?
and they were about to go into the end zone. Did they score and win?
Oh, man. It sure felt like they were going to.
I thought they were going to.
It was about to be the
Scary
worst,
as hell.
the worst possible event that could have happened.
They did not
was
pull
it
a
lifeless
Dylan Gabriel
Texas
to Anderson
a
play.
there's
Yeah.
no way they should win this game, and I fully believe if somehow Texas scores and wins, they win the national championship.
But they didn't.
I
They
know
did
they
not win.
It was beautiful.
They did not win. It was so beautiful.
And how
It
about
was
when
awesome.
I don't know if I've been that nervous in a non-OU game. I couldn't tell you the last time. I felt it in the stand. Like, they were showing Washington fans in
Yeah,
the stands.
yeah.
Like that's how I feel.
I was
like,
at ease because I went to
please.
bed at the end of the 3rd quarter and just figured, I hope when I wake up, Washington wins and Texas loses.
God. Oh, it was
How about
almost,
what Georgia went out and did? You kind of,
yeah.
Kirby put it on them to kind of say, hey, we should have been in this playoff.
But respect to Kirby afterwards, though, and trashing the system.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I think
in
Kirby
terms of
put it on the system.
saying
I think he told his team
all
that, too.
these guys opting out and all these like something has to change, and
And it will change.
it will
12
change with
team
the 12
playoff. It'll
team.
be totally
Things are going to
different.
mean more, but good for him for coming out and saying that after a straight up ass whooping,
Just a demolishment.
in that Orange Bowl.
And it was really sad. If I were, and I know this is a lot to ask, but man, what I wanted to see was the Florida State team either completely opt out or even more beautiful, walk off the field and not play in that game. They could have claimed a national title. They could have exited with an undefeated record, and it would have really stuck it to the powers that be. It was unfortunate to see them have it because history is going to remember a 63-3 thrashing. They're not. A kid's going to say, "Dad, look at this. What are you talking about? Somebody said Florida State was supposed to be there that year," and he's going to have to remember and explain to them, "Oh yeah, that's right. Here's how they got screwed." Because they're going to see that thrashing, and they're going to look at the record and say, Florida State must have not been any good that year, and that's why the committee did what they did, and that's not true at all.
Simply not.
And you can credit Michigan, but Bama did not look good.
No,
They looked like the team that played Auburn,
They
not the
looked
team
very-
that beat Georgia.
very
Sure.
average.
And
Yeah,
As good as these semifinals were, it's the ACC's fault that we didn't have a 12-team playoff this year.
that's right.
Because this would have been.
That's
I
right.
mean, Ole Miss looked good in their bowl game.
Penn State did not.
Penn State did not. I think if it would have come down to a 12-team playoff this year, we probably would have got in because they would have
Adjusted.
that 9, 10, 11 spot.
Yeah.
Mizzou probably would have got in, and then I don't think Penn State. I think we would have jumped Penn State as far as getting.
So it is fitting for the ACC that they're the ones who said no, and they got screwed out of the deal.
Man, it would have been an incredible. There were so many good teams in college football this year.
It would have been. Well, you got
Really-
a team like Georgia
really
that
one
didn't even
through
get
10.
a shot at it,
Yeah.
and that's unfortunate.
I think-
10 were.
I think Georgia.
Any of those teams could.
I think Georgia would have win the national title.
Oh,
I think-
I think so too.
Well, they're not going to play for it. I tell you who's going to play for it. It's going to be Washington and Michigan, and we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about all of the last game of the season and who might be the champion of our league, because we do Locks of the Week.
The realest deal. Locks of the week.
Locks of the Week are brought to you by 5 Star Concrete. David and Josh, local business servicing the metro area from patios, sidewalks, driveways, shops, and more. Call them or text them at 405-306-3014 or look them up on Facebook at 5 Star Concrete. Locks of the Week, guys. This is our last chance to do Locks of the Week, and for one, I have to say that I'm very glad it's our last chance to do Locks of the Week because I am tired of losing of the week. That's kind of what LOTW stands for me. I'm going to run through where we stand. I was 0-3 last week. Connor and Lucas were 1-2. Jay, you knew what you were doing. You're 2-1. That's a very respectable
Attaboy,
number.
Yeah, Bama let me down.
Yeah, and,
Don't let me
and
down.
Boy, but I sure did cover easy money with
yes, you
Georgia
did.
and Oregon.
The
Yeah, you
locks,
did.
locks of the century, is that what you called it?
That was
You and those were
I
big
did.
lines. Those were the two of the
I
three
was-
biggest lines in all the bowl season.
honestly with
And you went and got them.
we just mentioned it with all the opt outs of Florida State. I just knew that line for Georgia was you could have made it 45. I'd taken Georgia.
Well, for the season, I am 21-29-1 for a 42% win record. Jay, you're 24-27, 47%. Lucas, you are 28-23, a winning 55%. And Connor, you're leading the way, 29-22, 57%. Overall, as a group, we are 102, 101, and 1. It rounds to 50%. We win half the time.
That is
Guys, half the time,
insane.
we are right all the time.
That is so crazy.
We are so damn awesome. Well,
Vegas loves us.
yeah, they love my money. So let's make some locks of the week for this championship game, and we're gonna let you two go last, but you have to go, Lucas, before Connor, because you guys in the ESPN, you're neck and neck to see who can win it. You have to take opposite positions. All right, so here we go. We're going to make our picks for the game, and Jay, you and I are just academic here. We're not playing for anything but style points and trying to get our record a little bit closer to 50-50. You guys are playing for all the marbles. So if you both pick the same team, Lucas will win because he has more points in the SBN. If you pick different teams, then both of you still have a shot at it.
And I can catch him in locks of the week, possibly too.
You would be able to.
We'd be even.
You'd be even. That's doubly good. All right.
I hope we have two people picking two teams, or one team and two people picking the other. And that ensures our 50-50 for the season.
That'd be awesome. It'd be perfect. If there's any way we can lose all four of us and all pick different teams, then that's the way it'll go down.
That is
All right. So, all things considered, when I look at it, I look at the fact that I am 21 and 29 and 1. I can't trust my instincts. My instincts are the Michigan defensive line is going to wreak havoc. That I look at the defensive line of Washington and they look like small little guys. I just feel like Michigan's going to win the game. Therefore, I'm picking Washington to cover 4.5 points. That doesn't mean they win, but it's a narrow game. They very well might win. So I'm going to pick Washington plus 4.5. What do you got?
I felt good about Washington beating Texas. I did not think Michigan was going to beat Alabama. I was impressed with Michigan's defensive line. They really got after it. Their offense is still fairly putrid, but Washington does not have a very good defense. I was surprised at Texas's lack of success. I'm going to take Michigan.
Minus 4.5.
I don't like it. I don't like Michigan. I don't like Harbaugh. Washington, of course, has a puncher's chance. They get an early lead. I think Michigan's in real trouble. But
Because McCarthy can't pass.
I just don't know if they're going to be able to hold up against, how many big offensive linemen and tight end Michigan throws at them.
Mm-hmm.
And Texas did get pressure, did not get home. I think Michigan gets home more than Texas did. So, I don't know.
All right. Lucas, what do you got?
I'm going to go with Washington. I think that as good as I saw Michigan's line play against Bama, that Washington's receivers are the best in college football as a group. I watched Penix just throw these bombs down the field on great coverage from Texas, and the Washington guys were just pulling the ball down. I mean, there was this incredible catch after incredible catch over and over against good coverage. And so I think Penix is smart and doesn't do a bunch of crazy stuff with the ball, and that will help them. And I just don't have any faith in McCarthy or the Michigan receivers as bad as I think. Well, I don't think Washington's defense is bad, but I don't think they're good, except for the fact that they can just focus on stopping the run and maybe leave their corners on an island, because I don't think McCarthy can beat them. So, like Jay said, if Washington gets out to a 14-0 lead or something like that, I don't think Michigan can come back just because they're not good enough to throw the ball. So I'm going to take Washington plus the 4.
Well, congratulations, because Connor.
That's going to be interesting. No, I have Washington as well. I've got Washington not only covering, I have them winning the game as well for many of the same reasons that we've mentioned. It'll be interesting to see that defensive line for Michigan and what they can do to Penix. That said, we saw Penix under pressure quite a bit. Not quite a bit, but to an extent last in the playoff game. And the dude just, every time I thought he was throwing a ball away or every time I thought he was overshooting a receiver, he puts it on a dime. And if his receivers can do anything close to what they did on Monday, that attack is going to be a lot for Michigan to handle. So I also have Washington. Lucas, congratulations. You win the ESPN picks, but hopefully for this case, we can get 3 out of the 4 locks and carry an above 50% and above 50% finish to the season. So we'll see.
We'll see about that.
Does anybody think that if Michigan wins this game, there's an asterisk because of all the spying scandal over the last 3 seasons with, Connor Stallions and all that? Does anybody think that down the road, maybe, even after the game, will there be any pundits come out and say
It's an asterisk.
that it's, tainted?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so. I think so too. And that's going to really put a big asterisk on the whole thing, because you've already got Florida State not participating. You've got Georgia not participating. And so then if they go ahead and win it with all the controversy of that, then it's like the whole thing is a little bit rotten.
Yeah.
It's going to take it's going to be one of those things where we talk about this season and say, yeah, but in a lot of different respects. But let's do one last thing.
Hold on, do you think, real quick,
Uh-huh.
if Washington does win, I think it's the first time since they really started figuring this out around 2004 or so, like the blue chip ratio. They are by far, they're the only team under that blue chip ratio
You're right.
that would have won a national championship.
You're right. And every time that's happened, that a team like that has been in the championship, a la Oregon, etc., they didn't do real well.
And Michigan's, of the four that made it,
Yeah.
Michigan was the third in
Right.
blue chip ratio, but at least they're on that threshold of like 55%.
Right.
It's normally 60%, but Washington's down at like 35% blue chip
Right.
ratio. It's real. They will
bad.
be by far the least talented quote recruiting
That's a good
ranking wise to win a national.
It's a very interesting point. Now, does that include? I don't know if they've done well enough in the transfer portal ever to overcome that.
Yeah,
gap.
I don't know
I
if
don't
they've
know if that's been.
come up with
That'd
that
be
yet.
interesting to see if they've closed that gap a little with any of that.
I mean, hell of a job that coach has done there.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
he's in his third season there, I think, or
I
second.
think it's just a second.
His second.
And he's the one come from lower division.
He came from Fresno State, and he's done an amazing job. It's funny, we saw him maybe in a little bit of a green moment at the end of the game the other night, with his clock management and with how he tried to close out that game. Washington did almost everything they could to lose that game. Regardless, they're there. I think Texas is probably going to be kicking themselves a little bit. I think you look at the field of those four teams, Texas from a talent perspective and an overall just skill standpoint, they may be the best team out of those four.
That's the best part for me, at
so-
least on Twitter and they're arguing with Texas fans, is, man, you guys really
Missed your
blew an
chance.
opportunity here, because it's I don't want to take anything away from the teams because I think they're all good, but it is a weak 4-team playoff.
It is
Compared
relative to who could
previous
have
playoff.
and who could have been there.
Well, there's just no
Georgia's not in it.
There's just no super. We've had a run of, every year there's been one team that's just like, these guys.
One or
just
two.
ahead of
Alabama,
everybody.
Clemson in those years.
And unfortunately, we are always in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're always playing them. We played the
Yeah.
Deshaun Watson Clemson team, the Joe Burrow LSU team, the Tua-led Alabama team. It just on and on. Every time we got in, it was like, wow, we're really facing a juggernaut of a team.
Well, I mean, in
Even
Texas,
the Georgia team was
Yeah, the Georgia team was-
well, and that's us. And even, I mean, as much as Texas is kicking themselves, how much is Georgia kicking themselves for choking away that SEC championship?
yeah, Georgia should have been 3 times.
I mean, it's-
Absolutely.
I mean, that's
they lost to. I don't know how they lost to Bama.
a really big misstep.
That's a huge.
Between watching Alabama's Auburn game and watching their Michigan game, I don't know how they beat Georgia in between.
And so another thing that's delightful is to think about all those Texas fans who were driving and drove over and watched the Sugar Bowl and the semifinal and had to drive through Houston on their way back, which is where their championship would have been. They could have slept in their own beds and gotten up and drove the less than 3-hour drive to watch their team play for a national title. They're not going to get to
Yeah,
do
it was
that.
all set up for Texas.
It was so set up for Texas. That's just incredible.
Love it.
Well, one last thing for us to do. Let's make some too early predictions on OU's regular season record for next season.
I didn't know that was on
Throwing
the
that out
agenda.
It's on the agenda. It is now on the agenda. So what do you think they're going to be? Just give me a record. You don't have to tell me how much they win every game by, but I know we're going to say 12-0 in every case.
We do have 7 home games and 1 neutral site.
That's right. That's something. That's
Yeah.
something.
That's 8 out of 12.
There you go. So what are you saying, Lucas? We're starting with you.
I'm going to say, let's see, our road games are Ole Miss, Auburn, Mizzou, and
LSU.
LSU. I'm going to say 8-4 next season on our way too early pick.
All right. Connor, what do you got?
That's where I'm at as well. I'm at 8-4. Not happily. I could see us being 9-3. But a little bit more towards 8-4. I just think it's going to be a little bit of a shock to the system, not only as a fan base and as a diehard fan like I am and like we all are here, but it's a grueling schedule. I mean, regardless, even the home games we have are not going to be, these layups that we have, like we've maybe have been used to a little bit in the Big 12. Home game in the Big 12, I feel like there's every reason to win every single one, whereas now this is a little bit more difficult. So we'll see.
Man, that Tennessee quarterback, That's a scary looking dude after watching him play the bowl game against a good Iowa defense. I mean, they won 35-0 against a defense that has held tons of teams under 20. And that dude didn't find out he was starting until like 4 days before the game or something.
Yeah.
And that guy looked awesome. And that's scary.
He was a 5-star kid. He was very highly rated.
And Heupel's going to have a axe to grind, obviously, coming back home. So
Yep.
Heupel's terrible on the road,
that'll be a scary game.
and we are going to be up for that game.
Yes, we are.
That's going to be something.
Not to sound like a broken record, but 8-4 is what I was going with too. I'll put the caveat on very capable of a 10-win season.
So
I think that's our match. I think the O-line plays better than we think, and Jackson Arnold is who we think he is. I think 10 is the max. And still make the playoffs.
I can see 10
I think we
being
make
the ceiling and 7-5 being the floor.
Well, I would say I'd have to disagree with
That's a little
that.
edge.
I'd have to disagree with that. I mean, that's a safe range, but our ceiling is 12-0. Our ceiling is definitely 12-0. We are definitely capable of winning every game. That's possible.
I don't think from
That's
here on
definitely
out.
possible.
Well, of course it's possible, but I don't think from here on out we're going to see those type of records anymore. With the way the Big Ten is,
It's going to be very
the way
hard.
the SEC is now,
No, it's gonna
I
be very
just
hard.
don't see it anymore.
It's going to be very hard.
Outside the group of 5, Big 12.
Well, I just meant from those two.
cares?
No, from those two
Outside the
leagues.
group of
I
5
just
Big
don't-
12, the group of 5 ACC.
Yeah.
I just don't.
I mean, the
Yeah.
group of 6.
So I would say that there's two things that influence me that give me a different perspective than you guys. One, I take to heart what Jay said and his stats about how we made the elevation and the big jump from year 1 to year 2. I see us continuing to make jumps and strides in the right direction. I think that we've got a very soft schedule to begin the season with 4 straight home games. We should give us plenty of time to get things in gear, to get Jackson Arnold seasoned to where he can compete at the level we want him competing at and can then build on that. I look at the fact that I looked at the Farmer's Almanac, and it's going to be a snowstorm on November 23rd when Alabama comes to town, and they're not
The first of 2024.
Yeah,
I like it.
and so it's
Or ice storm, even better.
It's going to be it's good. They're going to argue about if we can play the game or not, but we're going to play it and we're going to win.
We'll spend the night here the week before,
gonna
so
be
we
awesome.
make sure that
Make
we're
sure
not
we
having to
can watch
drive
the
in the
game.
conditions.
That's right.
We'll go salt to the side.
I'm going to say we're 9-3, and I very much think 10-2 is on the table. 8-4 starts to become fairly disappointing, actually. So I'm a little bit of a shift, and I have more upward expectation than I have as far as tolerance for underperformance there, and in terms of losses. I'll be pretty disappointed if we're 7-5. I don't know how we can be 7-5, and I'd be happy with it. And
Yeah, even in the SEC, 7-5 is
I didn't sense me happy with it.
well, I
You said that's
not happy with it, but that's definitely a possibility in your world. That's not even very much of a
Also factoring in all the stats that Jay read about how good the defense was, and I do think they made a very big step this year. But even when we were going into the season, we talked about how pathetic this year's schedule was. So, of course, we better have made a big step in defense because the schedule was a joke. We didn't, the out of conference, we didn't have anybody tough.
SMU.
SMU gave us a run,
SMU is a good team,
but they're not a perennially major league team.
but they're a better team.
But
than
we-
probably
and
We've had plenty of years where we played Florida State, Miami, Ohio State.
Yeah, but we've also talked about how
And this year we didn't have one of those teams.
SMU is probably as good as Florida State when they came to
We
town.
didn't have one of those teams on the schedule this year.
well, but we
and they're probably as good as Miami when they came to town.
We talked about how quote unquote pathetic it was going into the season, which turned out to be a stronger Big 12 schedule because of how decent the teams that we ended up
The
playing
teams
were.
ended up being a little bit.
So I mean, Kansas ends up being better. Oklahoma State is a Big 12 runner-up, and again, they're not that good.
asterisk.
So, but
Well, the
I mean,
teams we
pass
avoided,
interference.
the teams we avoided turned out to be the bad teams.
Kansas State was the only one we avoided that was any good.
Yeah.
and they were also so good.
and they weren't
Baylor
that
and
good.
Tech were
Yeah,
Yeah, they were
Tech were bad. Baylor was bad.
TCU was not any good.
TCU wasn't good, and we beat them.
So I don't know, and I would say that we have to look at the SEC schedule next year with the same unknowns, that they might not be as good as we think they're going to be. And some teams may be better than we're giving them credit for.
I think there's 3 no question,
tough game.
at least I think 3 underdog games, which is probably the most we've had in the season.
Texas.
we probably haven't been an underdog 3 times in the regular season.
And we'll see what LSU ends up being.
Yeah, that could be our fourth.
That could be the fourth. So I mean, because that's the last game of the season.
Missouri, we might be an underdog in Missouri, depending on if they carry over what they did this year.
We'll see. Missouri's a team I'll believe it when I finally see it. I just don't think they're going to be.
A lot of my pessimism is sheerly based on the fact that I'm going to have to see an offensive improvement to believe it, type of thing. And it's going to happen quick. And I think you can go and you can prove that you have an offense if you go and you beat the crap out of Tennessee when they come into town for that first SEC game that we have in Norman. And then you can in September, and then you can turn around and go to Auburn and alternatively beat the crap out of them, or maybe not even that, maybe just win, because that place is going to be just as riled up as anything else.
I think these teams are going to be absolutely on fire to play us. That's another part.
I do think so too. That's good.
We're used to getting people's best game. We're definitely up there. They're going to want to prove that we are not coming into this league and we're not going to win 10 games, and it's not in their house.
Which is maybe a little bit more interesting for Texas than it is for us, because not only
target on their
more of a target. You have a Texas team who they win the Big 12 to close their tenure in the Big 12 out, and they go to a playoff with a really good team.
And they beat Alabama.
And they beat Bama. So I mean,
both of those have a target on their back.
Yeah, it's just.
Not to mention the name and the prestige, the blue bloodness.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
that's awesome.
It's not like Missouri and A&M came in and Missouri went to two straight SEC championship games.
Yeah.
Now they were in the East, which was the easier of the two.
It was not a great.
A&M's never done anything just like any other conference they've ever been in.
So late Mark Richt, Georgia.
But we're coming in with a decided target on our back, unlike when those two teams came in.
Yeah, that's very true. So we got a lot.
It's going to mean a lot more. It's going to mean a lot more.
It's going to
for sure.
So much more. Well, we're going to be back soon to talk about the championship and talk about other things that have transpired, including any late developments in the transfer portal. Until then, Boomer.
Sooner.